All right.
Hello,
So,
everyone.
Hi
Welcome to
there,
our podcast. We have me, Arseny.
Gustav.
and Cam.
Yes.
So we're gonna talk about topics that we have for this
Yeah.
week. Starting with the case study of Nike and the impact of Nike. So, I'll start off really quickly and just say I thought it was interesting, um, and obviously very obvious when you're in a global market and you're a global trading market and you're a kind of like a world dominator. You're gonna run into problems that might be legal in one country and not legal in the other country. And I think Nike really shined. The Nike case study shined it like kind of a big spotlight on that, on the sense of like they don't own their manufacturers, right? Like those people are their own people. They have their own company. They're just buying from them because they're printing it out for them. So I think I honestly kind of related a lot more and feel like I understood Nike a lot more comparatively to then before reading the case study. I was like, oh, they know and they do it and they have their own manufacturing companies. I wasn't very like knowledge based in Nike. I have never really done a lot of research in them. So I thought that was really good to know, honestly. Gustav, if you want to add anything or
Yeah,
Ars.
yeah. So I think it was quite interesting to see that even those huge companies with a lot of um, brand image and everything else that comes with it are
Mhm.
struggling with supply chain. I always thought it's only those smaller, cheaper brands like Shein or whatever who are using child labor. But even Nike, a global leader for sportswear, is struggling with child labor and all those um, working conditions and etc. So yeah, it was interesting to learn about it and yeah, and also see how they are
Yeah.
not
I feel
actually owned.
like, yeah, I feel like we usually in the international business class always praise globalization, like, oh, it brings culture and all of that. But we haven't really talked about the managerial, challenges that companies face when actually trying to go, in a global setting. And I feel like the case study really explored a new perspective that even if Nike establishes factories in other countries, there's way more things they need to take into consideration, like using the correct ethical theory, um, training their managers in order to make sure that the factory won't damage Nike's reputation as a company. And it really like also showed how businesses deal with that stuff. Like, if I remember correctly, Nike established a specific district segment within the company in order to specifically address this ethical concerns as part of the CSR policy, which I
Yeah,
find fascinating. Yes.
I would agree with that. I think it's just you got to keep in mind, right? You got to really keep in mind the sense of they don't really have any say what happens overseas, and those manufacturers, okay, like Nike to them is just another big company. They're making money, and the manufacturers are happy because they're paying people little to nothing,
yeah,
and they're using cheap material. It can be more high quality as something like Sheen or what you were talking about, Gustav, but you the manufacturers don't really care,
yeah.
right? They don't, because it's not their image,
Mhm.
because that's legal in their country. So like when we talk about this ethical dilemma, I'm like, then we have to get down and define what is ethics, because is it ethical to do that? In my opinion, no. But you can look overseas and they can say, yeah, that's very ethical because I did the exact same thing and now I own a manufacturing company.
Yeah,
Something like that. You can look at that way. So I think it's really difficult to kind of like use our Western brains. Yeah, we're not even
Western
from like
brains.
I'm the only person that's from the West, and but you guys obviously have a lot more kind of West built into you comparatively to someone in China, for example, or more East.
mhm.
Um, I would say it's hard to kind of relate ourselves and put ourselves in those shoes. because we see it as wrong. They
Yeah.
see it as making money, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, like this also ties in with the concepts of like ethnocentricity. Is when like someone thinks that their like race or their culture is more more advanced or more correct than the other one, which really makes it important for us to actually examine their culture, how they treat, how it works in with their within their values and convictions. Then we can really understand the problem and how to fix it, or understand their point of view of the whole situation, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Also, just to add on to Cam's point there before, at the end of the day, like all those companies and manufacturers are profit maximizers. So they're just looking to get the profit margins as high as possible, getting cheap labor, cheap materials, and selling it for premium price to Nike. Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's Nike who's suffering from their image. But do the customers really care? It's child labor. We all know it, and we're wearing it every day. So I'm guessing that's just how it works nowadays, or not nowadays, but how it worked in the past and still is today. Doesn't mean that this should stay like this. We definitely should take some action and try to change that,
Well,
as no one would like their children to work for one of those companies. But yeah,
Well, Nike already has taken some, steps towards the right direction, as we've seen. Like they first made sure that each of the factories, the public can really see their names and see their, they disclosed the factories themselves in order to increase transparency, and they also try to implement like these scores for each factory in order to improve their working conditions and ethical of the each individual factory. So I think that's a step in the right direction from Nike.
yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, the so-called lean programs are definitely a step in the right direction. Also, taking responsibility and actually like owning up to that issue and saying, yeah, we made a problem there, and we get rid of those manufacturers and try to look for new ones. That's definitely a step in the right direction. That is for sure.
Yeah. So here we have the next topic which we were given. What is your opinion on tipping in the hospitality industry? Well, what do you think about that, guys?
You want me to go first? I can talk about that.
Hmm?
Yeah, go for it.
So I think it's weird, honestly. So this is like another thing I feel like is a very Western thing. I mean, I lived in New Zealand for a few months a few years ago, and if you tip, it's rude. You don't tip because everyone's happy. Like you don't need to, like do that. And what I think is really big here is tipping. Obviously, in the U.S., like you have to tip. If
Yeah.
you leave $0, you're a rude person here. And so I think tipping culture has gone to an extreme max. I think there could be a nice balance of it. But I genuinely think that at least here, is over the top by way too much. And honestly, I hate it. I hate it when I'm out and I'm like, I get the bill and I was like, that person was great, like for dinner or whatever. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna tip, like I have to tip 20%. Like I'm not gonna tip like 15%. Then that means she's bad, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's like stuff like that, and then like it kind of gets in your head, and you're like, but that was like awesome, and she or him was a great server, for example, and then you're like, okay, I guess I'm tipping 20%. So, I mean, I don't like it at all. I think it's like a really like stupid way to be like thank you, especially when it comes to like kind of anything, like even a nice dinner, like what, it's a nice dinner and it's $200 maybe, like $150 between a few people, and like you're gonna tip 20% on that. Like I feel like that's just such like it's just not my thing, and it never has been. I hate it. I hate it so much.
Yeah, no. The only part I like behind the tipping tipping, how do you say it, about tipping in general. It's said it's like performance based, and waiters actually put in a better work and try to be as nice as possible. So your experience at the restaurant is much more pleasant. But obviously, I'm from Germany, and it works quite different over there. So I'm quite shocked when I came here first, that you have to tip 20%, because you're looking at the prices on the menu. It's like whatever, $20 for a burger, and then at the end of the day, it's going to be 28 because you have to tip and all those other charges coming in. So I prefer the way it works in Europe much more, as it's like if you actually enjoyed the dinner, if the waiter or waitress was nice, you tip them 10%, and they get a better wage. Um, they're not advised to get they're not um, they don't need to get those tips to make a living because they have a solid wage already. So I prefer that much more than the American way.
I would
Uh,
100% agree with that, Gustav. Sorry, Arsene, go ahead.
no, you can. Were you going to say something?
I was just gonna say like that's what I mean is like that kind of like middle ground of like you don't have to tip every time, but you have that tipping if you want, but you're not tipping 20%. You're tipping
Yeah.
whatever 10 to 12 or 10 to 13%. I think that's your like happy median, right? And you're not pressured to do it, especially with all the electronics now today, where like you put your card in. And I'm like at Chipotle, like what? Why am I tipping someone who didn't even talk to me?
Yeah.
Like, where is that tip going, you know? And like,
Yeah.
I have to like click no tip, like next. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
So I think that middle ground it would be great for sure. Go ahead, Arsene.
Well, yeah, it's not only in Europe, like in Asia as well, in Japan and like Middle East. No one is expected to tip, right? No one. Like it isn't customary at all. And thing is, in like this, there is an option not to tip in America. However, the way they actually present the tip really like pushes you to actually do it. Like they have like these like on the credit card thing, like you get for example, you just go to Hans Dans, you know, the ice cream place. I'm not sure if I pronounced the name correctly. You just buy an ice cream, you put in your credit card, and there's like a tip, even though they just made the ice cream for you, and it's like, and every option is like 25, 20, 20, 20, and then there's just like a small option like all the way down there which says just zero. So it just makes you feel awkward for actually clicking the zero option when there's so many other tipping options out there, and it really incentivizes you to actually tip. However, it also makes me bring up the question, like tipping overall. Do you think that it just businesses and restaurants just use this as an excuse, or like in the hospitality industry, in order to pay their worker less and make sure that they're more satisfied with their job? What do you think about that?
I think I don't really think that is why it's a thing, because especially over here in the West, there's so many rules and regulations around what is proper wage. I think tipping, especially though, when looking at a job, can be very attractive if you're especially in like the entertainment or like even more like the restaurant business, like that niche restaurant business, not like a chain restaurant, but especially when you're at those small businesses or like a bartender, especially too. I feel like there's a lot of there's a lot of attractiveness to that when you're looking for a job.
Yeah.
Like I think, I mean, I know my sister's a bartender, and she like she loves all the tips. She pockets all the tips, right?
Yeah.
She gets cash and she puts it in her pocket, and that's it. And so I think it can influence a little bit, but I don't think it's that deep. I don't think it's like, oh, the restaurant promotes tipping so much because then their workers can get paid less.
Yeah. No. Obviously, it's beneficial for every part of every for the employees and also for the employer, but also sometimes well, only the customers are really suffering from it, as it makes it just more expensive for them.
Okay, so uh, we have been given an essay question to explain the concept of culture, why is it important to avoid ethnocentricity and gain cultural literacy. Like we've touched on this a little bit with the Nike case study, but this also is prominent not only in manufacturing but in other business sectors such as like the hospitality industry, hotels, restaurants, or more just bureaucratic companies like offices in those countries that expanded into you know a new country. And yeah, so what do you guys think?
Well, I think it's really important to get to know all the different cultures and also just to respect them. I think there's definitely no culture which is superior to another. So yeah, just being respectful to every culture and just kind of minding your own business. It's just yeah, people have different beliefs, different backgrounds, and also different cultures. So if something they're doing is not of your interest, just let it be and respect it. Just yeah, just mind your own business, I guess.
Well, I also feel like it's important to actually adapt to that culture, because many cultures have like different attributes, different holidays, different eating patterns, and different work culture. So the company actually needs to adapt to that and do research on their culture and as well as the subcultures within that culture in order to basically make sure that the company moves smoothly within the country and basically have a good adaptation in order to make sure that project of expanding actually works, because sometimes if the company just does not change and just continues the American culture, it might really backfire on them considering how different other cultures are. For example, like time, right? In many South American countries, like they usually in many South American or West Asian or like countries, they don't really have a strict time. They may come 5 minutes later or 10 minutes later, and that's fine for them. But in countries like Japan or in some European countries, they're very strict on time. Like in Japan, like if you come 5 minutes later, that is considered rude, and you're basically, you're not going to get a good reputation. It's so a company needs to adapt to all of that in order to be successful within a country. Yeah.
Um, I agree with that. I think also just from a bigger perspective, not even company wise. I just think it's nice to like yeah, you want to adapt, and you want to adapt in a way though that you're not taking your perspectives, like even your prejudice and your prejudgment in with you. And so yeah, you can relate that right to a company, especially if you're in some form of industry that already has prejudice on a certain country or culture. I think that is where I think that's where you really need to learn how to gain cultural literacy. Is when you work in different industries that deal with these certain cultures or have negative viewpoints on certain cultures. And when you go and work with those cultures, what happens? I think that's a really big one as well.
Yeah, I just think it's really important to gain cultural literacy, and also it could bring some conflict because just once again there's different beliefs and values every single culture, but also it could help you a lot as a business owner having or as a global company even having people from all over the world with different cultures can be helpful to just manage different tasks and gain a different perspective on a few things could be really beneficial.
Well, I do agree with that. However, I think it's also important to mention the challenges with that. Like, for a company to run smoothly, you need to avoid cultural clashes within the country. So you need to actually make sure that your employees are educated enough on other cultures in order to avoid basically offending people, or in order to make sure that they don't disrespect them in the many ways you can do, as you know, on Earth, we humanity have basic hundreds and hundreds of different cultures and ways. So it is challenging. I feel like also, as well.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
guys agree? Okay,
Yep.
so our next thing, when talk about all this ethnocentricity, it all like goes back to globalization, right? So what are the positives and negatives of globalization, and what is America's role in this, as well as should America impose tariffs on importing countries in relation to globalization? So, what do you guys think?
Yeah, let's start off with globalization as a general. I think the positive effects of globalization, obviously, as we talked about culture here, culturally an exchange between cultures. Um, yeah, but obviously the big one with globalization is economic growth, as all countries are benefiting from free trade, um, investments, job creation, and all those parts. Um, so, in my eyes, in my perspective, globalization is a good thing. Um, and yeah, the leaders of every country should encourage it. As also there's benefits in technological advancement. Um, yeah, just everyone's benefiting from it. If one of you wants to talk about negative effects or bring in your own perspective, great.
Um, yeah, I definitely think that you can have. Well, we talked a little bit about culture. I mean, I'm a big believer in globalization. But we talked about culture, and I'll just try to spit out some negatives that I can see. Um, but when you go global and when you globalize and you start being kind of having this globalization world, a lot of cultures can be ripped apart.
Mhm.
So you get that perspective, I guess, if you want to look at that as a negative. I think you can look at the other side and have positives that people learn your cultures and people learn other people's cultures. So it can go both ways. And I think every single positive has a negative with it, especially when it comes to globalization. And I think America's role is like pretty. It's pretty interesting because American things are expensive, um, but American things are labeled as some of the best, made properly, type of thing. So I think that America can have a big role in this if they want to. Um, but at the same time, we know what's going on in the world today. Should America impose tariffs on importing countries? That's already happened. And how has that been? I'm back for me back home. I know it's been rough for some people. And I know that people are like kind of a little bit of a revolt right now. I know like people back home only buy things made in Canada or other places in the world that aren't American. They don't buy anything American. I know I don't really see it down here. I haven't seen it down here since I've been in the grocery store about buying things that aren't Canadian. But I don't know. I think it's a lot and it's a lot to digest. And then I also look at it as really quickly. I'll end with this. I look at it as short term. This is stupid, and this is just going to make everything cost more. Because if Trump, for example, would like to build all his, I think we talked about this last meeting, all his car parts in America, he has to build the factories to fucking build those car parts. Did I just swear? I'm sorry. I
I think
apologize.
It's
I think
fine.
it's
It's
because
fine.
Oh
It's
my
fine.
gosh.
It's fine.
You're right with it.
I'm sorry. Oh my gosh.
No, it's fine.
And then, yeah, sorry. And has to build. So I'm very passionate about this topic because I'm Canadian. Has to build all those factories for the car parts. Those factories are going to take 5 years to build, right? So we look at it as like there's a short term and this long term. And I think in the short term, this is not the best for America. If I'm using my American goggles, obviously I don't like it as a Canadian at all. But then again, from an American perspective, down the line, I can see the benefit. I can see what the goal is overall. Yeah, sorry about that.
Mhm. Well, yeah. It also, I feel like imposing tariffs encourages trade wars basically with other countries, which America really should avoid if they want to keep on having their global, dominance in the, following future. Because as we know, China is catching up and rapidly, and other countries are as well. You know, improving their imports, improving their exports. They're just, economically developing at a much higher rate, and I feel like this is basically just a step back for America, as it just encourages retaliation and also just puts higher consumer prices for companies, right? However, I guess you can say that like a small positive, um, it encourages domestic companies to take in the spot of the, uh, you know, for take up the sport from international competition, but that I don't think that really you know has a significant impact compared to the other negative effects which it has, the imposing tariffs on other countries.
Yeah, definitely. I think the negatives outweigh the positives by far. Obviously, there's we were touching on job creation through less imports, the components, or for example, the automobile industry. They're having to create those facilities to manufacture all the components, which leads to job creation. However, I think this will take a while. So I just think, yeah, as Cam said, it's quite stupid what Trump's doing. Um, yeah, it's just leading to higher consumer prices in general, and also as you were touching on trade wars. Yeah, just a lot of political conflict. Yeah, I don't really see the benefits.
Hmm. So, you guys have anything else to add? No?
I think we're good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, we touched on culture, we touched on the Nike case study, we connected everything up. Well, thank you for your time today, guys. This was our
Yeah.
second podcast. Have a good day. Mm.
Great.